And see through you, see your true color.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And I got you a big bam in this one. And I love that we finally got these forensic reports because they tell us so much. We can finally learn the truth about some things, really go through and deep dive certain aspects of this case, and some things prove to be true. Some things really have been missed by, it looks like, law enforcement. Even if they were trying to cover things up around this particular situation I'm going to discuss with you, well, they missed even covering this part up correctly, or they just missed it altogether. But I'm going to give you some information in this video that is going to blow your socks off. Okay? Blow your socks off. Blow your hat off. Hold on to your chair because it may blow you away. Make it to the end of this one and you will be shocked, I assure you. And I was pretty shocked myself when I looked at it. And make no mistake, I don't want to imply that the young man that I'm about to talk about and his involvement in this situation is in any way saying that he is the unaliver. I don't particularly enjoy accusing innocent young people. When I say innocent, I mean innocent of unaliving their friends, just based off of whims that maybe we don't like the kid. But I will point out when the stories don't match up at all and prove that they don't match up. I believe what I'm going to prove in this video is that the circumstances around the 911 call were not as they seemed. Couldn't have been. Now we got irrefutable proof that it couldn't have been. So somebody is lying. Now, was it the young man and all the people around him? Was this law enforcement having them go through this scenario? Well, that's for you to decide, but one or the other is correct. Either it was the youngsters lying through their teeth, or it was law enforcement having them lie. Now that, I don't guess we can really determine. My opinion is law enforcement had them lie about the whole situation and stage the 911 call. But that's just my opinion. But something happened and I'm about to prove it. And I'm going to show you some things that you've probably already seen, but then I'm going to show you something that you haven't. And if the defense missed this, this is something that is actually huge in this case, because it does prove, at the very least, that people are lying about circumstances around, at the very least, the 911 call. Get ready. I'm going to show you something about Hunter's knife that will freak you out. Are you ready? Let's go. So we know when Nunez gets there, here's Hunter, and there's the knife laying on the floor right there. And as they walk around, we can clearly see there is no knife on this table. It was clear to us in the beginning. This isn't anything new I'm showing you here. But as they progress through the crime scene, him and Hunter, and he comes out of Anna and Ethan's room, and you'll see on the table here, there is still no knife on this table. which is an important point, because he later tells Hunter to put that knife on the table. And in this same scenario, now Hunter has laid the knife on the table. So it's clearly defined that Hunter is the one that laid the knife on the table. As other officers arrive shortly after, and they go upstairs to check out the house, make sure nobody else is in it. At this point, nobody's gone upstairs. Well, we see the knife is right there on the table, right where it's supposed to be. And then later on, when Gundy gets there, he puts a lot of focus on this knife. And he says, here, look, here's a knife. Take pictures of it right where Hunter laid it on this table. And he takes photos of it, and more photos would be taken later by ISP. But that scenario needs to be understood.
Sure, and I got over there and I walked up the stairs, and I immediately went into Xana's room, which was the only room I went into, I went up the stairs, saw them. Were pretty uncontrollably crying and didn't know what was going on. Sure. And I told them to get out of the house and call the cops. And I went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the drawer because I didn't know if someone was still in the house or not. And I grabbed the knife. It's probably still on the little table they have in the living room area. Grabbed the knife. It's probably still on the little table they have in the living room area. Grab the knife. It's probably still on the little table they have in the living room area.
Downstairs.
Like in the middle, like where the kitchen level, that level.
There's like a little area there.
Yeah, there's an area, and I put the knife there after, but I grabbed the knife. And I went into the room and I checked like the closet and everything to make sure there was no one in there, and it didn't seem like anyone was in there. And then
Now, this portion is muted, but we later learned that he said that he checked the vital signs of either Ethan or Xana, or perhaps both, and that would result in him having blood on his hands, which would result in that blood that they found on the table where he set the knife down.
Shoot, I'm forgetting his name. Sorry, this is just a lot. What's his name? That's his name. They all came into the house. They were coming up the stairs, and I told them to get out. They do not want to come in. They need to get out. And that's when you guys roughly showed up around the scene, was when I told them to get out.
Okay.
And then one of the policemen came, and I showed him where I saw them, and he just said, stay where you're at, and I said, okay. And I didn't know if there were any more people upstairs. I didn't go up there. And I didn't know if there were any more people upstairs. I didn't go up there. And I didn't know if there were any more people upstairs. I didn't go up there. And I didn't know if there were any more people upstairs. I didn't go up there.
Okay.
The cops came as soon as.
Now, when Idaho State Police arrived, they started photographing the crime scene, and you'll see this is the picture they took first of the table with the knife. Then they zoomed in on a closer shot, and along with the knife, you can see blood smears. And those blood smears are obviously from blood where he checked the vital signs of Ethan and Xana. And I would think you would agree that it's pretty clear that those blood smears are from Hunter's knuckles when he set that knife down. He obviously had a little bit of blood on his hand from checking victims to make sure that, they weren't unalived. And we know this knife does not match any of the wounds on the victim, so this knife wasn't involved in the unalivings. But obviously somebody that was holding this knife had touched one of the victims. Now, we learned once we received the forensic reports that starting at 72 and continuing all the way, well, pretty much down to 105, and then continuing all the way down to almost the end of this thing. So pretty much 132, there was a lot of bio stains collected from things in this case. Well, as we learn later, a lot of these bio stains, starting right here, come from Brian Kohberger's car, apartment, house. And most of these stains come from Kohberger's car, apartment, house. But when you get to these stains, some of these actually came from the King Road residence. And then we further learn with a lot more detail as we go through these reports that item number 76 is actually the submitted swab from the living room table. So now we know that the living room table, the little blood swab or little blood stains around the knife that Hunter set down is item number 76, swab from the living room table. All right, so hopefully that wasn't all as clear as mud. What I wanted to clearly establish is the fact that Hunter, from his statements with law enforcement, said that once he arrived, he told the girls to go downstairs. He went in the kitchen, got that knife, and then he went into Xana and Ethan's room. And we heard him say he checked the closet. He would later go on to say that he had checked the vital signs of, I believe it was Ethan, but it could have been Ethan, could have been Xana, could have been both. And that would explain why he had blood on his hands. And then he had set that knife down at the top of the stairs when law enforcement arrived. And you can see as him and Nunez were walking around, he put that knife from the top of the stairs onto the table, and that's where it stayed. And then when everybody else arrived, that knife was there. They started photographing it. ISP came in and photographed it. And you can clearly see the blood that was on Hunter's hand as he set that knife on the table. And Hunter went on to say in his interview that he set the knife on the table. So he clearly said that it was him that set the knife on the table. So those blood stains could only come from Hunter's hand. Hunter also said that that was the only room that he went into. He didn't know who was upstairs. He didn't go upstairs. And now that we know that the blood stains on that table is a specific swab, 76, I believe. Well, now we have the forensic reports. So we can actually go through and see who that blood on the table that Hunter had on his hands when he set that knife down actually belonged to. And I think the answers to this question is going to create more questions than any answer we could ever want. Watch. Because when we go back to this report and we start looking at what the evidence actually tells us, one thing is kind of interesting when it gets to conclusions and interpretations. This is where they first say in any of these reports that the DNA profile previously obtained from item 1.1 matches that obtained from the known reference sample of Brian Kohberger. This DNA profile is at least 5.37 octillion times more likely to be seen if Kohberger is the source than an unrelated individual randomly selected from the population as the source. So this is that statistic, just like they've given statistics on all this other stuff where they're saying everything matches Kohberger. I find it interesting that this made it into the court record, this particular spot in all these reports. This one right here is what made it into the court record. This is the only one I've found so far that states this. And it's followed after this conclusions and interpretations part of this particular report. It's kind of weird because what this says is DNA analysis employing the polymerase chain reaction, the PCR, was used to generate a short tandem repeat STR profile, A, not multiple, but just A, like one, from a portion of items 72 through 78, 101, 103, 103, 103, and 108. Now, why would this say that they created an STR profile from a portion of items 72 through 78 and then all these other ones, as if to say we created one STR profile by taking all these pieces of evidence and combining them together, and we created this profile. And then following that is when they say, oh, and by the way, Kohberger is a 5.37 octillion match to 1.1. Is that saying that this is the profile that they created for Brian Kohberger that was a combination of a portion of all of these things? Because these things included swabs from the stairwell, half wall, second floor table, swabs from second floor outside of the bedroom, the living room table, third floor near the west bedroom, and then all of these are stains from Kohberger's pillow and mattresses. I mean, are they saying they took all of this and created an STR profile with known reference samples to Kohberger and then compared that profile to 1.1? That's what got 5.37 octillion. I mean, that's what it sure appears to be, but I don't know, because that's just weird. I better find this somewhere else where it's a lot more clear. But back to the point at hand. Item number 76, swab from living room table. Oh, and we'll go through this, by the way. Now, Kohberger is excluded from every piece of evidence in the entire case, except for the DNA on the knife sheath. All the evidence that they attributed to other people, yeah, Kohberger is excluded from everything. Not one piece of evidence, y'all. In all of this I've gone through. But let's go to this in particular. We are looking for... Oh, DNA profiles obtained from items 76 and 77. What are those? 76, submitted swab from living room table. That's Hunter's swab. 77 is a submitted swab from the third floor door. What does it tell us about these particular profiles? The DNA profiles obtained from items 76 and 77 match that previously obtained from the known reference sample of Kaylee Gonzalez. This DNA profile is at least 1.01 octillion times more likely to be seen if it's Kaylee, rather than an unrelated individual from the general population. Not Kaylee in a mixture with a minor profile. This is just Kaylee. The DNA profiles obtained from 101, 103, 103, and 103 are consistent with that obtained from the known reference sample of Brian Kohberger, because these are pillows out of his apartment. But this is the samples taken from that table that Hunter set the knife on, and they don't match Xana or Ethan. They are a single source contributor to Kaylee Gonzalez. So if on item 76 found in this living room, on the living room table, and we know that's the swabs from where Hunter set that knife down, if that matches Kaylee and Kaylee only, well, then that means somebody's lying in this thing. Now, I can understand why that was missed by the forensic techs and law enforcement, because once they realized that that sample of blood on the table was Kaylee's, they went, well, this isn't the perpetrator, this is just Kaylee's blood. They probably didn't think about everything that I just showed you in this video related to where that blood actually came from. And that's why I wanted to make sure that I went through and showed you everything in succinct order, such as that knife not being on the table until Nunez got there with Hunter, him setting it on the table later in his interview, clearly stating that he's the one that set the knife on the table, and then making sure that I went through and explained how he said he never went upstairs, didn't know if there's anybody upstairs. He did go into Ethan and Xana's room, check their vitals, and that's why he would have had blood on his hands. So that would explain the blood on the table when he set the knife down. Except now that we know that blood wasn't Ethan or Xana's, it was Kaylee's. What are the ramifications? I don't know. Because it brings up a lot of questions. One thing it does show for sure, though, that somebody's lying. Now, is it Hunter that's just lying? It's quite possible that he's just lying. He went upstairs and maybe checked Kaylee and got her blood on him and didn't want to tell him for some reason. It's quite possible that that whole 911 scenario was orchestrated by law enforcement. Events happened before that call was ever actually made, and that's why he had the blood on his hands. It's also quite possible that, much like Nunez understood from Dylan's statement when he first arrived, that Dylan thought that that was Kaylee in Xana's room, and everybody had to go back and correct it from there. And Dylan said, well, you know, I guess I was wrong about that being Kaylee. I guess maybe it's Xana. Well, I mean, I guess it's quite possible that was Kaylee, Ethan's room. And if Hunter went in there and checked vitals, and I mean, that was Kaylee in Ethan's room. If Hunter went in there and checked Kaylee's vitals and got her blood on his hand, and then everything else would line up right. So I don't know. There's too many contingencies there. But one thing's for certain. That's Kaylee's blood on that table. Hunter would have had to have come in contact with Kaylee's blood at some point. So somebody is lying. Now, is that enough evidence to reopen the case? I don't know. I guess the way that the appellate courts work is if you brought that argument, they would look at it and say, well, does this override, the other evidence they have against him in the case? Good grief. If they ever had an evidentiary hearing and they showed a judge or an impartial judge all of the evidence that they used to exclude other suspects, and I mean, it's like 15, 16 pieces of evidence that I've logged now that they excluded suspects from. And Brian Kohberger, it literally has his name as being excluded from every one of them. Every one of them. And there's even more egregious things when you get into a certain aspect that I still haven't made the video on yet, because I'm still looking at more data on it, and every piece of data that I look at on it shows me something new and even more egregious. And when I bring that one though, that's the big one. I got another one I'm going to bring you here in just a little bit though, because we were lied to halfway through this case. Well, probably several months ago. It created a media storm, and I'm going to show you the hypocrisy in that. And that one really upsets OPOV. But in the meantime, please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, please, on this one. Post your thoughts, any criticisms you have. Till next time, Pavarotti's out.
Oh, gonna give it a shot. Only